Hi, my name is Jonathan. I'm a tutor at Seeds of Literacy, and we're going to talk about analyzing text in a passage. So regardless of the type of text that you're reading, there's a few things that you can do kind of throughout the reading process to make sure that you fully understand what it is you're reading. So this is something that you get better with over time, but you really want to understand the process so that you can help yourself out, help yourself find the hints and clues from start to finish to fully understand what it is that you're reading. And that's obviously the goal when you're analyzing text in a passage is to comprehend everything that you're reading and really understand kind of where the author's going and what they want you to take from the passage. So when you're doing that, there's really, we're going to break it down into three sections. There is before you read, during reading, and after reading. So we're going to go through each one of those portions of the process and talk about what you really need to look for to be able to analyze the text in the passage. So before reading, you haven't read any of the passage yet. The first thing that you want to do is just start right at the top of the passage and look at the title and look at the author. So those are the first two things that you're going to see. The title is really just whatever the author named the passage. And that is going to give you an idea, obviously, of what the passage is about. So you read the title and you think about it, and depending on what that title is, you might have some past knowledge about that subject that you can really kind of start thinking about. Maybe you know the author and you know the type of writer that author is. And so you can start thinking about maybe the topics that they write about, maybe the time period they're from, just anything on the front end that helps you get in the right frame of mind before you start reading a passage will really help you understand it better right from the start. And another one is the purpose for writing. So what does this writer want to get across? And the title can often tell you, what they're trying to get across. For example, if the title of the passage was The Turning Point in the War, you know that the author's talking about a war. Maybe it's a specific war if it's named in the title. Maybe they'll tell you in the passage, but the turning point in the war means to suggest that this is the title of a passage that's going to talk about something that was really important, that really signaled a change in the way things were going in the war and may have ultimately played a major role in the result, who won, who lost, etc. So the title and the author will really get you going and really help you think about what's happening and what you're about to read. And it will really help you start to understand what the purpose might be for the author writing the passage. Next, we want to talk about, you want to think about what type of text it is. So that can mean what type of genre it is, which has a lot of meanings. Genre can mean fiction or nonfiction, which is fiction being something that might not necessarily be real, and then nonfiction being something that's based on reality, that's based on facts and evidence. So those are two genres, but for purposes of what we want to learn here, we're really talking about literary genres, and we're talking about the type of writing that you're reading in the passage. And so we're going to talk about just a few of those. So the first one, and probably the more common one you're going to be reading when you're going through a passage, is a narrative. And this is a story, and you want to ask yourself, is the author trying to tell this story in order? Is there a sequence of events that are taking you from an introduction to a conclusion? Is this a descriptive passage? Is it really just listing traits or characteristics about something and describing them to help you understand that thing better? Is it a procedural passage? So it could just be instructions for somebody on how to do something. Is it a persuasive passage? Is it trying to convince you of something? Is it trying to advocate for a position? Or is it expository? Is it explaining something to inform the reader by providing specific information that will really kind of inform you about something and explained it in detail. So these types of texts are the most common ones that you're going to see when you're reading a passage: narrative, descriptive, procedural, persuasive, and expository. So during the reading, you're diving into the passage, you start reading, you've already read the title, you've already kind of thought about the purpose of the writing, the type of writing it might be. And so now you're reading, and the first thing that you want to do is find the main idea. So the main idea is the most important idea in the reading. It's usually going to be stated in one sentence within the passage. So it's good to find that right away and be sure to understand kind of why it's the main idea, what topics, what details are supporting it, and where does it start? Is there a topic sentence that contains the main idea right at the front of the passage? And if it's there, then you know that a lot of details are probably going to follow it that will support it. You also want to look at context. So context is very important when you first start out in reading passages and trying to analyze text, because context is really just trying to figure out what words mean. So if you're not sure what a word means, you can often tell what it means by looking at the words and sentences around it. Do they have positive or negative connotations? Are there emotions associated with that word in addition to its definition? And is there some figurative or hidden meaning behind its literal meaning? And that is really what takes us to inference and implication. And this is something that you want to look for during reading. So explicit words are explicit meanings or ideas, those are directly stated. Implicit ideas are indirectly stated or they're hinted at. So you can infer something or imply something based on what something says and what something doesn't say. So for example, if it said, the gold medal swimmer won his first contest at the age of 20. Well, it doesn't talk about the other contest that he's won, but to suggest that he's won his first contest at 20, and perhaps you're reading about him later in life, the implication is that he won more contests after that, and he's won more since then. And that's just an example of an inference you draw from a sentence in a passage based on the things that it doesn't say, but it implies or hints at. So some other things you want to do during reading is predict an outcome. Can you think about what might happen next or in the future? Can you kind of tell based on where the author's leading you, perhaps what the title is, or something like that will really be able to help you. And then there's cause and effect. So is there an action that's making something else happen as a result? And that's an important aspect of many passages, is there's a cause and then there's an effect. So you really want to kind of watch the progression throughout the passage, and it'll help you analyze the text. Is there comparing and contrasting? So there are often literary devices that are used to compare and contrast. So if you hear something like a simile, which it says like or as, to compare something. So it's really trying to tell you that two things are the same. Or contrast is using a metaphor, and that's to say or imply that two things are different. So these are some things you can do during reading. Some more are the mood. So what's the author's attitude? Are they angry? Are they really just kind of trying to teach you something? Are they happy? Are they hopeful? That mood is really just the author's attitude towards the subject that they're talking about. Then there's the tone, which is also kind of the author's attitude. So mood is really a lot about emotions, and tone is really the attitude. So the two are intertwined, but they're important to really pinpoint while you're reading a passage so that you can analyze the text based on how the author's feeling about that subject. Then there's the theme. So what does the author believe about the subject that they're talking about? It's usually not directly stated, but you can see it running through the reading itself. And that's based on kind of the actions, the words, the thoughts, the feelings, really just the characteristics that are described throughout the passage. So after the reading, the first thing that you want to do after you've read the whole passage is summarize the text. So what are the important ideas that you gathered from the text? Was there a story that you could retell kind of in a sequence? If you're doing a short summary, then you really want to pinpoint both the most important ideas, most important examples, and again, kind of like what happened first, what happened next, really kind of develop a chronology of the passage. And then, as I said before, you want to identify the main idea. So there's going to be a main idea in a passage that is really the most important idea in the reading. And that will ultimately often lead you to a conclusion, depending on what type of writing it is. And there will often be details in the middle of the passage to support that main idea and lead you to your conclusion. And those details in the middle are usually examples. You want to analyze those examples and ask yourself, what is the writer trying to help you understand? So are those examples trying to help you understand things in a certain way based on the subject? And that's something you really want to think about after you've read and when you're looking at kind of the meat of the passage. Then there's structure and organization. So how did the writer organize the text, and how does that support the author's idea? So were they using which devices were they using from the ones that we talked about? Were they doing a sequence or a time order? Were they doing a compare or a contrast? Were they doing just something descriptive? Were they doing a cause and effect? You want to look at that structure and organization and determine how it supports the author's idea and the author's theme, and really how it supports the author getting to where it wanted to go. And kind of, you want to evaluate this after as well as during. So during the reading, we were talking about the author's mood and the author's tone, but we want to also look kind of big picture at the end. So what about the author's purpose? What does the author want you to understand from reading this? Then the author's tone and the author's viewpoint. So how do they feel about the topic, and why do they think that? And what are some of the words that they're using to kind of show how they feel that way? Then finally, the author's techniques. So we've talked about similes and metaphors, but just generally, kind of what text and what features of text does the writer use to help you learn about the topic? And kind of what techniques help you understand the ideas? And what other techniques did the writer use? So these are really just questions that you want to ask kind of after you've already read. So kind of to summarize the way we're analyzing these texts, again, it's before, during, and after are kind of those breakdowns. So before, you want to really look at the title, the topic, the genre. So you really want to kind of look at those overarching areas to figure out what is this going to be about. Then while you're reading it, you want to find that main idea. That main idea is the most important idea in the story or in the passage. And once you have that main idea, you understand kind of what the author's trying to get across. So you use context and inference and implication to understand the words and sentences throughout the passage, and use words that surround each other to help you understand ones that you're not sure about. You also want to pinpoint the tone, how the author's feeling about the subject, what the author's attitude is about the subject, and what theme the author's trying to convey throughout the passage. Then after you've completed reading the passage, you want to summarize it. What are the big ideas? What were the most important examples in the passage? And what was the writer's purpose for writing that passage? And what techniques did that writer use to make sure that his or her purpose got across correctly? And just kind of one parting tip is reread things. You know, if you need to read something over again, you should do it. And something that I like to do is to have a pen or a highlighter and underline words, highlight important words or ideas, maybe jot a note in the margin. And then you can revisit those important words, those important ideas when you're conducting your analysis at the end. And it can help you tie things together. It can help you go back to areas that maybe you thought were important and you're learning were not so important, or, you know, even better, super important ideas that you can find more easily when you're trying to answer questions and you really want to be efficient with your time.